Hi everyone, so this week we are going to be looking at drawing cylindrical shapes and cylindrical objects. There's a few basic principles I want to talk about before we get started. The first of which is going to be a repeat of last week. We're going to talk about perspective, which is, once again, the phenomenon in which objects that are close to you appear to be larger and objects that are far away from you appear to be smaller. And you can test this just by holding your hand out in front of you and watch what happens. When it's close, it's big. When it's far away, it's small. Okay? That same principle applies to drawing things that are circular or cylindrical. So let's take a look at our object. I'm going to start with this paper plate because it is basically like a circle, and you can kind of see just the shape of it. That's not a circle. You're not actually seeing a circle. You are seeing what's called an ellipse. A circle would look more like this. Okay, and the reason it looks like a circle from here is because you were looking at it at a perpendicular angle to its surface, and the camera lens, which is your eye, is approximately the same distance from all the edges of the paper plate. But when I start to tilt it, what you notice is that it starts to turn into like an oval shape. And actually, let's take a look at something. I'm going to try and find the opposite corners. So if I hold that up, you can see I made these two little marks here to show you kind of like, if I was to divide this in half, those would be the points that the line goes through. Now, what happens when I start to turn this? Yes, we notice it's an oval, but also what else? You notice that like these halfway points aren't even on the very end. You see that? They're actually behind it, and that's because this half of the paper plate is closer to you and therefore appears larger than this half. So it's not a symmetrical oval from front to back. It's actually smaller on this side and bigger on this side, again, because this side is closer to you, and that's that law of perspective happening. So I want you to keep that in mind when you draw a circular thing. So let's take a look over here. I'm going to be drawing it just based on where I'm sitting, and here's my drawing right here. Let's try and adjust this a little bit. So, I'm seeing something that is definitely wider than it is tall. And once again, I can measure that from the height and the width. So let's go, I want to say I'm seeing something like this. We can start from, maybe let's start from either side. And I know that these 2 points are above that halfway line, right? So when I measure from here, this point is actually going to be slightly above it, like that. And the same thing is true when I do that line all the way through, and then this point is slightly above it. Now, what I need to do, it's going to be a little bit tricky because I have to measure the width versus the height of this thing to get it on my paper in the right proportions. Proportions mean the relationship of sizes between two things in a drawing. So the proportion between the height and the width is a ratio. It's a combination of numbers where this number is bigger and this number is smaller, right? So, how can I do this? Well, if the thing was far enough away, I'd be able to extend my arm and hold my pencil like this and capture 1 unit of height, just like that. You see how my pencil is now exactly the same height as the thing? And now if I turn it, let's do it this way, I can figure out how many times does that unit go into the width. and it's about 1 1/3. So I can come over here and measure. If this is 1 1/3, I did this backwards actually, I should have measured the smaller unit first. 1 1/3 means it's 3 plus 1, so it's actually in quarters, like that. And that means this has to be a square, because it should be 3 units high if it's 4 units wide, right? Math. So we're going to go ahead and measure 3 units high. What does that look like? Well, if that's 3 units wide, we can kind of take that number. Oh, look at that. Our pencil is 2 units wide. So let's find 2 units. And 3. Something like this. And then we can kind of rough it in. This part you want to use very light lines because you're going to want to be able to correct it. One thing about the laws of perspective mean that this angle is going to behave differently than this angle, right? Because remember, this side of the plate is closer to us. Now, I'm going to ask you to stop at just recording the circle, but to kind of help illustrate how this is working, you can kind of see the part where the plate comes up, and how is that distributed throughout the area of the ellipse. You can see that if we just look at this rim right here, I'm going to try and trace it. Whoops, there it goes. You can see that this space right here is very small compared to this space, right? But we know that in reality, they're the same distance from top and bottom. So that means that this gives us a sense of the volume or the height of the plate. And it also helps us to become aware of how perspective is acting on the ellipse. Next, we're going to switch gears and look at a proper cylinder. This is a similar concept because now we've got something that we understand to be circular, but because we're seeing it at an angle, it is an ellipse. But we also have to deal with the problem of projecting sides and dealing with an edge that we don't see the whole surface of, right? Because it's down here. We can't see that. The only part of this bottom edge that we see is the one that is coming towards us. Now, cylinders behave with a certain kind of predictable principle, which is that you don't see corners here. This arc transitions smoothly into the sides here, and then this edge transitions smoothly into this back edge. What a lot of people do when they start drawing cylindrical objects is they make the mistake of drawing something that looks like a football. I'm going to go ahead and draw on the plate for you. They draw something that looks like a football with sharp corners here on the edges, and then they project the lines down, and then you get more sharp corners here. Now, the reason that's wrong is because when we look at this, there are no sharp corners, right? It's a smooth ellipse going all the way around. But the reason we think of it as a sharp corner is because we understand that from the sides, it actually looks like a rectangle. You see that? And we know that that's a sharp corner. But we're not seeing it directly from the side. As soon as you start tilting it, that sharp corner goes away. Look right here. See that? So, we have quite a bit of work to do. We have to first record this top ellipse, and I'm just going to eyeball it. And then we have to project these lines down from the side, which again we're going to measure the angles of, right? Measuring that angle, measuring that angle. And then we have to figure out how far down does it come. Well, again, we can measure. Here's how you measure. You're going to stick your pencil out and make sure that your arm is the same distance from your face when you're doing this. I'm going to come up here. You're going to stick your pencil out and you're going to point the tip of your pencil against one side and you're going to intersect the pencil with your thumb on the other side. That captures 1 unit of distance. Now remember, if I move my arm far away or closer to my face when I'm doing this, I lose that unit of measurement. So I want to make sure that I maintain the same consistency of distance from my face when I'm doing this. So that is 1 unit. And what I'm trying to figure out is how far until I get to here, right? Because that's where the next curvature starts. So I've got this 1 unit like that. I'm going to come down, and I think that this is about at the right level where the next curve starts. So coming back to my drawing, I can capture 1 unit like this, and I can come down, and I'm going to say that the next one starts right about there. So I'm going to go ahead and draw a very light line across, and now I know that this next curve has to start right here at this intersection. So I'm going to go ahead and start that curve, but remember it has to come out gradually from the sides. Now, how deep do I make the curve? Well, I can base that on observation. I know also that this is farther away from my face than this one, and therefore it's going to appear to be a little bit shallower. It's not going to be as deep of a curve, because if it was like this, it wouldn't make sense in terms of the edge of this container. So it's something like that. All I'm asking you to do for this assignment is this very simple line drawing. You don't have to shade anything. You don't have to add any interior details. I'm not doing all these ridges or like the interior ridges in there. I'm not doing this inner lip. Just the simple line drawing of the shape of the cylinder. And what I'm going to be looking for is, did you make these marks that kind of help you to figure out the angles of the thing? So here's the secret hidden part of the assignment. Inside your cylinder, I want you to draw the head of a little animal poking out. It can be any animal that you choose. I'm going to go ahead and do a cat. And that's what mine looks like. Okay? Just for clarity, please write your name next to the cylinder. You don't have to circle it, I just did that. But that'll help me when I'm going through and just quickly glancing at who's done the work and who hasn't. Write your name and maybe also like your grade. So I'm in, I don't know, 35th grade or something. You're going to be in 6th, 7th, or 8th. That's what I want to see for your drawing. Please try and keep it nice and big on the paper. I realize this one wasn't the whole paper, but I would like you to try to take up as much space as possible without going off.